All right, live visuals there here in Tshwane. This is at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College. As you know, this is the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. First witness there, General Mkhwanazi. Currently on the stand, of course, they've just adjourned for lunch, but essentially this was the introductory stage or phase, if you will, where we've just heard on the policing organogram from the General. What he's gone on to state is, at least from the executive authority being the minister, taking us down to the National Police Commissioner, and then his three deputies, but spending quite enough time on the strategicness of one specific national deputy, and that is crime detection. Now, this is a position that is currently occupied by the suspended General Shadrack Sibiya. Now, in that specific one, he described it as the heartbeat of policing, that when you speak of this specific National Deputy Police Commissioner, crime detection, you're talking about somebody that oversees detectives, oversees crime intelligence, and oversees forensics, so quite critical to the overall investigative process. And one then would wonder how problematic it would be if you would have a head of such a strategic division being away for an indefinite period of time. But these are some of the issues we're going to ventilate now in just a short bit, because I'm not alone this afternoon. I'm with political analyst Mr. Sandile, just to unpack proceedings thus far. Mr. Swana, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mkhwanazi. Good afternoon to your viewers.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Quite a lucid general. When looking at him today, his demeanor quite confident. And human psychology in most instances would say to us that outside of your territory, you'd be somewhat uneasy. But we're seeing a general who's quite confident in this space, almost similar to what he was when he called that briefing on the 6th of July, because one would think in that specific instance he was in control, he had called the media to him, but in this instance he's being led. What did you make of just his demeanor?
I think I see a competent, well-trained police officer in the general, because the idea of substantiating allegations and providing evidence is what he's trained to do when eventually any case would go to court. So he's not entirely in unfamiliar territory, but certainly his composure does inspire a lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he had to, though, almost issue that caveat at the beginning to almost serve as an indication or qualification of the testimony. He indicated that it must be emphasized that as police officers, they are there to investigate and interrogate whatever evidence that comes before them, but that beyond that, they establish a pattern. So when asked that, even in that briefing, when he indicated what was happening, it was based on the patterns that over time they would have established of how criminals would conduct themselves. I don't know what you made of that caveat, because when hearing it at the beginning, I almost assumed that there might not be a lot of evidence. So the general had to first give us that qualification that before I testify, you must know that we work on a pattern. We have investigations, we gather evidence, and then we establish a pattern, and it's based on that we then can make certain conclusions. What did you make of that?
I suppose there are elements of education, because lawyers have got their way of arguing, detectives have got their own way of arguing. So you will hear detectives and police talk about a modus operandi.
Yeah.
So they look and say, this particular type of criminal, this is how he works. Therefore, when they see a crime with a similar pattern, they say most likely it's the same guy.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And let me just quickly add this, by the way, because I think it signifies the gravity of the situation. There are formal reports that have been produced internationally that these crime syndicates operate from Ethiopia to Cape Town. And our ranking as South Africa in terms of organized crime, which has police participation and the participation of elected officials, is in place. The police are infiltrated in terms of these reports, and we know from Shamila Batohi that indeed, she said, even the NPA is influenced or if not infiltrated.
And she quickly attempted to retract that particular statement, given that it received a lot of traction and attention, so she was quick to retract it. But I want us to get into the mandate of the commission, because this is where the chair, Justice Madlanga, started off. But before we get to that, I'm going to quickly cross to my colleague Kenny Mapanga, senior SABC News reporter Kenny Mapanga, who's standing by. He's somewhere on the grounds here at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College, who will just give us a summation of some of that testimony that we've heard in there. Kenny, it's over to you.
We've just entered the lunch adjournment of day one into the Madlanga Commission that is tasked with probing those very serious allegations that pose as a threat to national security, where we saw that Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi made those allegations of a sophisticated organized crime syndicate allegedly working with key state institutions in the criminal justice system. So we've seen a bit of a slow start, I must admit, Fundo, to the testimony of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi. It seems that the Commission is trying to lay the foundation of various aspects of the criminal justice system with respect to his role in the South African Police Service, I guess, before they get to the meat of the allegations that he made in that press briefing earlier this year, where he made a number of allegations and named several individuals, implicated them in these very serious allegations. But of course, Fundo, we're no longer dealing with the theme of utterances made in the context of a press briefing. The Lieutenant General, that is the KZN top cop, is now under oath on the stand, and he'll have to substantiate the significant evidence that he puts before the Commission. We've seen him this morning start with his experience in the South African Police Service, which is quite extensive, beginning in 1993 with the force, and then later continuing with the service in 1995 until to date. He also speaks about the ranks, the distinct ranks that one gets within the South African Police Services. I think what is trying to be illustrated there is that there is a specific role that each rank carries, and for anyone to try and interfere with the kind of operations that are governed by that particular rank, they would need the assistance of that individual, allegedly. Of course, he'll elaborate further on that when it gets to the meat of the evidence. He, of course, goes into the reasons why he used that platform of the press briefing to address the challenges that SAPS was facing, stating that he is warning of a potential threat to the criminal justice system, and of course he's seeking an intervention through the Commission, and should that intervention not be made, you could run the risk of seeing the collapse of South Africa's criminal justice system. And then of course he's delving into the political killings task team, its establishment. We know that it is to serve the number of political killings that we have seen in the KZN province that delve back to pre-democracy and democracy, and of course we've seen it lately get much worse in the KZN province. So he's currently dealing with the nuances of that political task team, the kind of funding it needs, the kind of operations it carries out in our country, and the kind of role that it serves. I'm sure many South Africans were expecting the Lieutenant General to get into the crux of the issues that he has delved into in the press briefing, which are serious allegations that he made against several individuals, but we will get there soon. He is going to take quite a number of days before he completes his evidence before the Madlanga Commission. But of course, right now it's a bit of a slow start, where he lays the foundation before we get to the meaty evidence, where we will see whether he will repeat those claims that he made during that press briefing, what names he will name, and the implications that will flow from that. Over to you, Mfundo.
It's quite the truth, Kenny, that a number of people that are watching today would have expected that to a certain extent they would get straight to some of those allegations, very explosive, that we had heard. But I suppose indeed the foundation is important here, and for everybody to fully understand the policing organogram. Well, we continue our conversation. That's SABC News senior reporter Kenny Mapanga, who continues to monitor proceedings inside. They'll be back at 2 p.m. But we continue our analysis here outside with our political analyst, Mr. Sandile Swana. Mr. Swana, my colleague there, Kenny Mapanga, saying Today was essentially a bit of a slow start for some. Those that would have heard those very explosive allegations might have possibly wanted to hear that level of explosiveness today already. But today we're hearing of the policing organogram in its entirety, very detailed. They've taken him through the various aspects or divisions, even going as far as taking us through his resume and his qualification. How important is it in just this foundation to understand, even as South Africans, how the policing division works or the policing ministry works?
I think for me, what was being disclosed here today is already devastating. Just as a simple example, how the budgets and the authorization to operate works. And when you discover that even Shadrack Sibia himself signed the approvals of those budgets and authorization for this political task teams killings to operate, how the interministerial committee approved for them to operate, and then we hear somewhere else that one minister came and just said they must stop the operations with all the budgets, everything in place, with all the people that needed to approve having approved. So to me that was already explosive. And I saw that Mkhwanazi has been in the system for a long time. He masters those organograms. He knows what happens where. You talked about the engine room or the heartbeat of the police.
Crime detection.
Exactly, crime detection, forensics.
Where you would have suspended General Shadrack Sibia being the person who oversees all of this. And I think that for me became the point where I said, if anything, of course he's innocent until proven guilty, but if anything, today we fully understand the strategicness of that specific division, if ever we didn't, because there are 3 national deputies, but we understood that this one is the one that deals with detectives, oversees crime intelligence and forensics. So most certainly if you're going to have somebody there that is suspended for an indefinite period, then already that would pose some sort of a challenge, because who's taking the decisions?
Well, the flip side to that is that if we're just to talk as citizens, we cannot have a suspected criminal overseeing the engine room of the police or the heart of the police either. Number 2, from the presentations by the General Mkhwanazi, it is clear that they have a lot of capacity in terms of these generals being able to do a lot of tasks. So I'm sure General Masemola has allocated somebody to oversee that function so that detective work continues, forensics continues, crime intelligence continues. But certainly Masemola had to protect us to the extent that somebody is suspected of being a criminal in uniform.
Mr. Swana, we'll leave it there for now. We'll take a quick ad break and then we'll continue our analysis in just a bit. All right, more news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us on Point.